Hello everyone! My name is Rachel Hill, and today we are going to talk about copyright. So to get started, let's think about what is copyright. So copyright refers to the legal rights of an original work. Copyright law protects a work's creator to ensure that they receive credit and compensation for their property. Before we move on, let's look at some terminology surrounding copyright. So a creator is the author, artist, musician, writer, and/or producer of an original work. So it's whoever is creating the work. Fair use is the right to reasonably use a copyrighted item without obtaining permission from the person who holds the copyright, which is usually the creator. Infringement is a violation of copyright. Intellectual property are patents, trademarks, trade secrets, and other intangible properties, or something that's not physical but can still be covered under copyright. A license is a permission to use a copyrighted item given by the copyright owner. And public domain are works that belong to everyone and can be used by anyone for free. So why should we care about copyright? First off, copyright is the law. It's not just a suggestion or an obligation. You have to follow copyright laws. The current Copyright Act was passed in 1976, and it protects both published and unpublished works once they're in a physical format. It also established the term of copyright to the author's life plus 50 years. This was later extended to the author's life plus 70 years, or 95 years from the first publication, or 120 years from the creation of the work, whichever one is shorter, for works with uncertain authors, like if it was written under a pseudonym or by an anonymous author. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 1998 prohibited unauthorized use of copyrighted items using technology. So this act made it illegal to download music or movies without paying for them. And infringement of copyright law can result in fines up to $250,000 and up to 5 years in prison. So it is a serious crime. It's our ethical duty to ensure creators are compensated for their work. And using copyrighted material without permission is a form of theft. So what materials are copyrighted? Copyright, a form of intellectual property law, protects original works of authorship, including literary, dramatic, musical, and artistic works such as poetry, novels, movies, songs, computer software, and architecture. So basically, any medium can be copyrighted. Copyright does not protect facts, ideas, systems, or methods of operation, although it may protect the way these things are expressed. For example, a book may state the fact that the sky is blue. The fact that the sky is blue cannot be copyrighted, but the book that fact is in is likely under copyright. All material on the internet is copyrighted unless stated otherwise. So when in doubt, assume it's copyrighted. Let's talk a little bit about fair use. So fair use allows people to use copyrighted materials under certain circumstances without permission from the copyright owner. So these circumstances consider the purpose and character of use, including whether such use is for nonprofit educational purposes rather than of commercial nature. It also considers the nature of the copyrighted work and the amount of substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work, and the effect of the use on the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. So there has to be a balance between all four of these fair use criteria for it to hold up as fair use in court. So first, let's consider purpose. It is more likely that a work used for educational purposes rather than for profit will be considered fair use. Also, if the work is used to add new information and not substitute the original work, it could be considered fair use. So U.S. students using a copyrighted item for educational purposes, like for a school project or research paper, would probably have a stronger case of fair use than if you were trying to use a copyrighted item to make money. So you also need to consider the nature of the work. So creative works like novels, songs, paintings, things like that, are less likely to be considered fair use than factual works, such as textbooks or news articles. We also need to look at the substantiality. The quantity and quality of the work used also determines if it's considered fair use. So the less content that you use of a copyrighted work, the more likely it is to be considered within fair use. Also, if you use a subsection of the work rather than the heart or the main idea of an original work, that will also be more likely to be considered fair use. So you want to avoid using the entirety of the work or using the main topic of the work if you want to be considered fair use. And then lastly, we look at the effect. Is your unlicensed use of the copyrighted item negatively impacting the market for this item? So if the original work is not as marketable because of your use, it will likely not be considered fair use. So basically, you don't want to try and replace the copyrighted item or make it to where people don't buy that original work because of what you chose to do with it. You want to make sure that the author is still being compensated for all of their hard work. So let's talk about public domain. Works that are in the public domain belong to everyone and can be freely used without compensating the authors. So works within the public domain can include works with no clear original authorship, works where the original copyright term has expired, or works that were published without a copyright notice under the 1909 Copyright Act. So typically works in the public domain are going to be a little bit older because their copyright term might have expired or for one of these other reasons, but that does not mean that every old material is in the public domain. There are plenty of materials that are copyrighted, so you need to check and not assume that something is not under copyright because of its age. Next, let's talk about license. So a license is permission given by the copyright owner to use their original work. A license is often obtained by paying royalties, and royalties are payments made by the person using the copyrighted work to the owner of that copyright. And a license also usually comes with limitations and stipulations of use. So you can't just do whatever you want with the item just because you paid for it. So for example, if you purchase a movie on Amazon Prime Video or DVD or however you purchase movies, you have permission to watch that movie for your personal entertainment. You do not have permission to create a home theater and charge other people to watch the movie. In that case, you would be making a profit on someone else's work, which would be a violation of copyright law unless you have a written agreement with the copyright owner that you are allowed to do this. Let's look at some examples and determine if it is a violation of copyright law. So the first example, you are working on a presentation for school on ocean life. As part of the presentation, you show a 30-second clip from the 2001 documentary series Blue Planet because you believe that the visual component will enhance the instructional impact of your presentation. Is this a violation of copyright? It probably is not an infringement of copyright because it could likely be considered fair use. So if we think about the criteria for fair use, the first one is purpose. In this example, you are using this clip for an educational purpose, not for commercial purposes. Next, we look at the nature of the work. So Blue Planet is a documentary, and documentaries are more factual in nature rather than a form of creative expression. Next, we think about the substantiality. So the clip used was 30 seconds, which is a small portion of the whole Blue Planet series. and it did not give away the main idea. So you're probably considered fair use in that area as well. And lastly, we think about the market impact. So your use of this documentary clip will likely not impact the series' market value. So overall, I would say that this example would not be a violation of copyright law. Let's look at the next example. You are starting an Etsy store selling homemade artwork. You really like the artist Georgia O'Keeffe and decide to create paintings just like hers and sell them on your store. Is this a violation of copyright? Yes, this is a clear violation of copyright laws. You are copying a whole creative work and are profiting from it, possibly at the expense of the copyright owner, so it does not fall under fair use. You also did not obtain a license to use the work in this way, so it is definitely an infringement. The last example. You are an aspiring filmmaker and wish to make a movie based on a local author's novel. You obtain written permission from the author to use their ideas and pay the author royalties. You also use music in your film that has expired copyright terms. Is this a violation of copyright? No, this is not an infringement. You have written permission to use the original work and have paid for it, and you are also using music that falls within the public domain. In closing, remember, copyright is a serious crime and it is not to be taken lightly. So stop and check for copyright permissions and evaluate your use before you move forward with an item. And when in doubt, ask your librarian. The librarian can help you navigate copyright law and ensure that you are using materials legally and ethically. Thank you for your time.